After a month of close calls and whatever the hell last week was against Dallas, the Carolina Panthers finally found a way to finish.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here live on YouTube, where I am following every Carolina Panthers game. And thanks for listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, as only 2 weeks remain for you to ask me weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. But do not fret, starting in the off season, it's going to be the weekly Friday mailbag all throughout the off season until we get back right around preseason next year for the 2025 season. Either way, all you got to do is either at me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council to get those questions in right now following the game. So do that and answer those, get me those questions in for the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. The Carolina Panthers 36, the Arizona Cardinals 30 in overtime. The Panthers improved to 4-11 on the season on an afternoon where they finally found a way to finish after the last month being so close to some signature victories for first-year head coach Dave Canales. Coming out of the bye, Panthers are feeling good about themselves, getting to win at home against New Orleans, getting to win in Munich against the Giants. Bryce Young finally coming into form, showing why the Panthers gave up all they gave up to get him number one overall about 18 months ago. They come and they play against Kansas City at home in a game where I told you on the show, I felt like the Panthers could be competitive in it. Did I pick them to win the game? Certainly not. It's KC. They've won back-to-back Super Bowls. They have Mahomes and Andy Reid and all of the allure and mystique there is about the Kansas City Chiefs nowadays in the NFL. But that was a team Carolina absolutely can compete with, and they did. They had the Chiefs down to the wire in that game of a minute 46 after Bryce Young drove them down the field. Chuba Hubbard was able to convert that two-point conversion. The Panthers defense just could not get off the field after they really helped the offense in that fourth quarter with those two back-to-back punts that they forced, those sacks they were able to get on the last couple of those drives, and gave the Panthers offense an opportunity to tie that game, but could not make that stop when they needed them most at the end of that game. And it's not something that I think surprised you or anyone out there, having watched Kansas City over the last couple of years, and really this season they found a way to just get ahead of their opponents and make the plays that their opponents could not make in order to win all the games they've won so far this season. But Carolina was close, and you were encouraged by that result. Then the next week at home, the Panthers thoroughly dominated Tampa Bay for 3 quarters, but then could not get a stop in the fourth quarter. The offense finds a way, though, for the second week in a row, led by Bryce Young, to go down the field. Bryce steps up in the pocket, finds Adam Thielen 25 yards down the field. The Panthers have a 3-point lead with 30 seconds left, and you're sitting there thinking, all right, didn't win last week. It's okay. Kansas City is Kansas City. But Tampa is a team that struggled with injuries, that's been not great the last couple of months or last couple of weeks. This is an opportunity to beat a team that you absolutely can beat, a division rival. But the Panthers defense could not get a stop. Tampa Bay kicked a 50-yard field goal, takes it to overtime, where then Carolina gets a stop, gets the ball back, and looks like they're going to go down the field, kick a field goal, and walk it off once again. Unfortunately, Chuba Hubbard fumbles. Tampa gets the ball back. They run it down the field, kick off, kick the field goal, win that game. A heartbreaker for Carolina in a game where I felt like they were the better team for the majority of the day, but were not able to win on that Sunday afternoon. Then the next week in Philadelphia, one of the classes of the NFC, one of the classes of the NFL, Carolina's in that game all day long. And Bryce Young appeared to lead the Panthers 97 yards down the field on that final drive in the fourth quarter, but Xavier Legette just could not hold on to the football. And who knows if Carolina does actually get that touchdown and Pinheiro makes the field goal to put them up by 1. Does the defense get a stop on that afternoon where Philadelphia's passing game wasn't great? And even after the win, A.J. Brown is up in the locker room whining about not getting the football enough where the Eagles' pass game was in that situation. Who knows if the Panthers get that stop? But they were close. And that was the second week in a row where I felt like they should have won that game against a team that certainly was better than them. So 3 straight weeks, they're close against KC. Can't get that finish at the end of the game. They're close against Tampa. Really should have won that game. Could not finish. Close against Philadelphia. Couldn't finish. And last week, I don't know what that was against Cooper Rush and the Cowboys, but it was really an out-of-body experience for a Panthers team that had been competitive, that had been playing some really good ball over the course of 5 weeks and just did not follow up those performances last week against Dallas. We sat here and talked about it. It happens. They didn't play well. That's not who they've been. Let's see how they bounce back and how they respond. And how did they respond? They got to a 20-3 lead today against the Arizona Cardinals, a team that was playing with everything on the line. If the Rams won, they could not lose. The Rams ended up winning, of course. So Arizona knew they had to win this game. A tie did them no good. Losing obviously would eliminate them from the playoffs against a team that has thoroughly owned them over the last decade here in the NFL. The Panthers having won 6 of the last 7 heading into this matchup today on Sunday. And the Panthers came out determined to run the football on that opening drive. 11 of the 15 plays on that 70-yard touchdown drive were rushing attempts for 43 yards, 7:58 taken up on the clock. That's the same thing that happened last week opening the game against Dallas. Carolina was dedicated to run the ball, but then Bryce Young fumbles, and that really kind of killed the momentum, the R that they had heading into that drive where they were trying to go up and take the lead immediately. But today, they came out and they scored not on their first drive, but also on their second and on their third, 3 touchdowns on their first 3 drives. The first time in 98 games, the Panthers have scored 3 touchdowns to open up on their first 3 drives. That's the first time since week 17 of 2018 down in New Orleans, where Kyle Allen got to start that day, and Carolina won 33-14. In a game, a lot of people complained about the Panthers winning because of draft position, but that's the last time we had seen Carolina come out and start a game offensively. They did the way they did today against Arizona. And it's not like it was just all Carolina. Like, they were fantastic, but the Cardinals helped them out. There was a questionable, certainly rough in the passer call, some other issues that the Cardinals had. They had 7 penalties for 59 yards in the first quarter alone, and they entered into Sunday's game as the least penalized team in the NFL, only being penalized 5. Well, it looks like Mike got. They end up having 11 penalties in the game today after they ended up not being a team that necessarily was penalized a ton throughout the season. And that was something that really helped Carolina early on in this game as they found a way. Now, I think I unplugged my mic accidentally, so let me know if you can still hear me. But either way, like, the Panthers came out and they were just on fire offensively early on in this game. And that really gave them momentum, but they did not make it easy. You're up 20-3 in that situation. That is a game that you have to find a way to really control the rest of the way. But they weren't able to, because right there in the middle of that second quarter, the Cardinals found their way. James Conner had 12 carries for 111 yards in that first half. The first time in his career he's had over 100 yards rushing by halftime, had 9.3 yards per carry in that first half, had a touchdown on those 2 Arizona Cardinal touchdown drives. James Conner was able to have 105 yards. That's the second time we've seen that happen of a running back in recent weeks. You go back to Bucky Irving in that Bucs game. In that fourth quarter, there were 2 scoring drives, 111 yards from Bucky Irving on those two drives. Then today, James Conner, 105 yards on those two drives. But starting off in that third quarter, once he went down, when Josie Jewell tackled him, twisted up his knee, that changed the game plan for Arizona and their ability to really control the game offensively on the ground and put Carolina back on the front foot, as both the defenses really stood tall there in that third quarter. But then in the fourth quarter, Carolina's got an opportunity, get some separation. Bryce Young leads Panthers down the field, a fantastic throw. And something we've seen from Bryce over the last couple of weeks this season since he's come back, really post-Denver, in the starting role, that quarterback, has the blitz in his face, throws the ball with anticipation, really a moon ball over to David Moore. And he's had some great throws where guys like Moore, like Thielen, and like Leggett have all let him down in those situations. Not today, as David Moore is able to connect with Bryce Young for 18 yards to put the Panthers up 30-20. And you're sitting there in that game thinking, all right, you had a 23 lead. You're now up 30-20. It's the fourth quarter. You got to be able to close it out and win this game. And, of course, Arizona immediately responds with a 9-play, 70-yard drive with Kyler Murray running for 20 yards for a touchdown. The Panthers get the ball back the next drive. It's okay. It's fine. You still had a lot of success moving the ball up down the field. You've taken care of the football. Respond. Instead, they have a nice run on first down that gets called back because Robert Hunt gets a holding call, and it feels like the Panthers have had, over the course of the season, just some really ill-timed penalties on some critical drives, and that was one of them where they're unable to get off or stay on the field on that drive. They got a punt, and it looked like they were going to get the ball back immediately, as it appeared that the Cardinals had muffed the punt. But instead, the punt went off of Sam Franklin Jr.'s back, and it turned out that that's where the ball was dead, right there at the 40-yard line, and that Carolina would not be getting the ball back. Felipe Franks, unfortunately, great celebration was wasted, as the Panthers actually did not get the ball. But Carolina got off the field once again defensively, as Kyler Murray threw what basically was an arm punt interception to Damani Richardson. If they had to punt the ball, which they would have had to done on 4th and 11, maybe the Panthers get better field position. Maybe they get worse. It doesn't really matter either way. They were set up in position where they could then run out the clock again and win the ball game. And it looked like they were going to do it. 3rd down and 5. Bryce Young looks over to Dan Chisena, who's lined up with Budda Baker, one of the best safeties in the NFL, connects with him. But the problem, though, with 2:15 left was he didn't stay in bounds. He goes out of bounds, and the Cardinals still had 2 timeouts and a 2-minute warning at their disposal. Had he instead gone down, maybe Arizona calls timeout right there. Maybe they let it go down 2-minute warning. Either way, they're not left with a timeout on that drive at the end of the game that led to them to kick that 58-yard field goal and take it to overtime. So that was one error that the Panthers made. Now, watching in real time, didn't think about it. Then had some people text me like, what's going on there? And I went back and looked. It's like, actually, yes, should have gone down. But either way, big play there for Carolina to stay on the field and to be able to run out more of the clock. Then you get down to a 3rd and 3 situation. And I'm wondering, do you run the ball here? Because if you don't get it, the clock runs. Arizona's got to burn a timeout. Then they have no timeouts left on that final drive. Instead, they decide to throw the ball. Bryce Young just goes a little bit too quick there, trying to find Dan Chisena again. Why he's the guy they're going to on these 3rd down situations, I don't know. It worked the first time. Should have worked the second time. Bryce kind of just short arms it, gets into the dirt. It's 3rd and 3 with 1:57 left. And I'm sitting there wondering, you're 3 and 11. You're at midfield. If you don't convert, Arizona, yes, they have 1 timeout left, but it's not like, I mean, maybe they go down the field and score a touchdown. I would have risked it. I would have tried to won the game right there in that situation. And Dave Canales pondered it. Bryce Young's telling everybody, all right, let's huddle up, let's do this. And instead, they opt to take the delay game penalty, punt it away. And while the Panthers defense does what it's done, other opportunities this season could knock it out the field. And it looked like the Cardinals completely botched the clock at the end of the game. Now, I don't know why the officials didn't kind of stop the clock just to make sure whether Murray got it or not. I didn't think he got the ball. I don't think he got the first down, but apparently he got the first down. And you have Jonathan Gannon sitting there wondering, did we get the first down or not? Clock's ticking. Looks like the Panthers have won the game. Instead, Gannon, the coach there in Arizona, was able to get timeout with 2 seconds left. They kick a 58-yard field goal. That would have been good from probably 65. And here we go again. The Panthers could not finish. They're going to overtime. And on their final 2 drives, getting the interception, giving up that touchdown, the Panthers had the punt. Could not stay on the field, could not run out the clock, could not finish. So in overtime, you get the ball back. You got an opportunity to go down there, score a touchdown, finish the game. They go 3 and out. And again, on a 3rd and short, it's 5 wide instead of trying to run the ball with Chuba Hubbard and being about what Dave Canales said he was going to be about, which is being stubborn and running the football. And unfortunately for Carolina, even after giving up a 4th down and 2 from the Cardinals' own 18-yard line, knowing Arizona needed to win, they were able to get a sack, force a punt, and they got bailed out by another bad penalty by the Cardinals, who had an illegal man downfield. That ended up having a punt that would have been at the Panthers' 34, 35, 36-yard line, end up being on the Cardinals' 49-yard line. Panthers just needing 1 or 2 first downs to be in field goal range to kick that ball and win it. But Dave said, forget that. We're not kicking a field goal. We're getting back down to basics. We're going to run the ball 28 yards on first down to Chuba Hubbard, and then 21 yards on the next down for Chuba Hubbard, who just waltzes into the end zone. The Carolina Panthers finally find a way to finish. They didn't make it easy. They were certainly helped by penalties. They had some calls go against them there in this game, but the team showed resilience, and they showed that they can bounce back after a tough performance. They can beat a team that was, heading into the game, in contention for the playoffs, but ended up not being the case anymore as Arizona's been eliminated, and Carolina has now doubled their win total from a year ago, sitting here at 4-11 through the first 15 games of the season. Now an opportunity at Tampa and Atlanta to also spoil their seasons and decide who's going to win the NFC South here in 2024. So a huge victory for this team at home to be able to get it done for the fan base that was out there. Cold day in Charlotte. They get rewarded as the Panthers find a way to walk it off at home once again against the Arizona Cardinals, continuing to dominance as they have now won 7 of the last 8 games against the Cardinals. And not just a big bounce back for the team overall, but for Bryce Young, for what he was able to do this week after the way he played last week. That response makes it even more clear that Bryce Young will get another opportunity in 2025 to be the Carolina Panthers quarterback. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win to win 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers. Carolina Panthers winning in overtime at home in their finale at home against the Arizona Cardinals, 36-30, finding a way to finally finish after they couldn't finish against Kansas City, could not finish against Tampa, could not finish against Philly, and then I don't know what last week was against Dallas. They find a way to finally finish in this game, and just a great overall response from Dave Canales' team after they had played so hard. They had the 2 wins prior to the bye, playing close against those teams I mentioned just before, having the stinker last against Dallas to come back to wipe that one away and to give this kind of effort in a game that Arizona had to win. And that's the great thing about the NFL is when these teams are still playing hard despite being 3-11, that they're still fighting its teams that desperately need to win in order to go to the playoffs. We talked to Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals earlier this week, and he was saying how nervous he was because he could not trust the Cardinals team because the Cardinals have not been able to beat the Panthers over the last decade, and this would be another game where he felt like they may not find a way. And, well, of course, we saw the Cardinals were not able to find a way, even though I'm imagining in Arizona when they kick that 58-yard field goal and make it, Cardinal fans are thinking, okay, maybe we're going to find a way to win this one. And no, that was not the case. Carolina had to punt after going 3 and out. Arizona could not stay on the field. And then Chuba Hubbard, 2 touches, 49 yards, and waltzes into the end zone. The Panthers winning 36-30 at home. Bryce Young, great game for him. And statistically, rarely have these games from Bryce looked on paper like you would expect out of someone who's been playing as well as he's played over the last 7 weeks. But today was one of those days again where 17-26, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns to the air, 107.5 rating, had 5 rushes for 68 yards and a touchdown. 2 of those big rushes, 34 yards and 21 yards coming on the same drive. And that's really been great about Bryce recently is just his elusiveness and his ability to scramble and to pick up some yardage. And he did a little bit of that of last year, but really did a lot of that recently here in Carolina to help this team really have success and compete, not necessarily win games, but he certainly helped them win this game today. But last week, we saw Bryce fumble multiple times. We saw a couple of interceptions in that game. And you wondered, how was he going to respond? Did people come out and say too early that he's going to be the quarterback again in 2025? The Panthers maybe have actually not made a terrible mistake by taking him instead of CJ Stroud, or was it going to be just an anomaly and Bryce is going to get back to playing the way he had played over the course of the previous 4 games? And that's what we saw today. Bryce went back and played with the Bryce we saw in Philly, the Bryce we saw at home against Kansas City and against Tampa, and who we saw in Munich, and who we saw against the Giants, or against the Saints, rather, at Bank of America Stadium, where he came out and really had a good performance. And this is the second time this year after an average, which what I would call, I mean, Denver's probably below average performance, even though he racked up some points there. Not points, but yeah, they did get some points, but really some stats there in the last couple moments, really in garbage time. When the game was still in the balance, he didn't play well. When it wasn't, he made some plays, and that made you go, could this be something you can do through the entirety of a game? And they come back after that and play well against the Saints. And what I thought to that point in time had been one of his better games as a Panther. That was great to see. To have a career high as far as 4 turnovers last week, to come back and play this well, not put the ball in harm's way, that shows you how far Bryce Young has come along throughout this season. And it's a long season. We're all learning, myself included, just how long an NFL season can be. We're 2 weeks into it. You're ready to bench the guy, and Canales decided to do it. And then you get Andy Dalton there. You're feeling good about maybe Andy can help the team the rest of the way. And who knows, depending on how he plays, maybe he's going to be a bridge in 2025 to Dalton. Then it starts to not play that well. He gets a car accident. Bryce gets out there. He's turned things around. It's a long season. We have all found that out this season. And damn, what a great game for Bryce Young. The stats, they don't necessarily back it up. But if you watch and you've seen what he's done in the past, what he did today, Bryce Young was really good for this team and continues to build upon the momentum for him to be back in 2025. And you would think now, 2 weeks left, the way he's played over the course of the last month and a half, he's going to be the quarterback in 2025, I would think. Of course, we're going to still evaluate, still take the next 2 weeks and take the overall sample size from this season and last season as well, and look at their other options before making any sort of determination of who should be the guy. But it really feels like Bryce Young's going to be the guy again in 2025. And then we'll see what he does from there and how things go in the future in Carolina. But the development that you were hoping to see from Bryce as he sat down, even though Dave Canales never said it was about development, but what we've seen from him since he's come back in, it's extremely encouraging, especially after a poor week to play the way he played today. And defensively, it's not like the defense played that great. They still gave up 30 points, still gave up 206 yards on the ground, 4 straight week. That's happened. 200 plus yards on the ground, 6.1 yards per carry for Arizona. And I tweeted out last week when attaching the link to the podcast that if your quarterback turns the ball over four times and you give it 200 plus yards on the ground, you have no chance of winning. They gave it 200 plus yards on the ground, but the quarterback took care of the ball, put the ball in the end zone, and the Panthers found their own rushing success as well today, where 36 carries, 243 yards, 6.8 yards per carry. Chuba Hubbard, 25 carries, 152 yards on the ground, 6.1 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. And for Chuba, especially after fumbling the game away against Tampa, the great year he's had, to come back today, to have the ball in his hands, to close things out in overtime and to get that touchdown, just had to feel great. Redemption. He sat there on the bench after the game a couple weeks ago against Tampa, just head down. It's just in disbelief. Man, I cost my team the game, but to go out there and to be a massive piece of this win today, great for him. So when you're able to win the turnover battle, you convert in the red zone, that really helps you win these games, even when you give up 200 yards on the ground, which is just who this Panthers defense is. Like, and overall, looking at the stats, total first downs, Panthers had 22, Cardinals had 23. Third down, Panthers were 6 of 14, Cardinals were 6 of 13. Fourth down, Panthers 2 for 2, Cardinals 1 for 1. Red zone, both teams 3 for 4. Goal to go situations, both teams 2 for 2. Total net yards, Panthers 392, Cardinals 382. Evenly matched teams. The difference was Carolina took care of the football. Arizona did not. And that's what Dave Canales came out there at his press conference and said today, Carolina Panthers football. We took care of the ball. They didn't. That's why we won. They ran the ball well. They closed it out there. Chuba Hubbard, 49 yards, walk off, get this win, and have now doubled their win total in 2024. Now, can they triple their win total? A lot of positive momentum has been built over the last month and a half. Can they continue it by ruining the seasons for the Bucs and possibly the Falcons? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats for live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You can start with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, back here again on Locked On Panthers. Carolina Panthers walk off in overtime, 36-30, ending the Cardinals' opportunity to go to the playoffs here in 2024. And part one, possibly part of a three-part spoiler opportunity this season. Now, of course, either Atlanta or Tampa is going to win the division. And right now, the Falcons, they have the tiebreaker over Tampa, even though they're still, I believe, a game behind them. As I don't think Tampa, they play like Sunday night, right? They play tonight against Dallas. Yeah, so we'll see what they're able to do. Dallas has also been eliminated, so we'll see what their motivation is in this game tonight. But Tampa Bay has a half-game lead as of this recording, but if they win, it'll be a full-game lead over the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday. The Panthers have an opportunity to dictate who will win the NFC South. If they are able to go back and beat Tampa next week, and then they can go on the road and beat Atlanta, well, I think that would lead Tampa likely win the division. But either way, two opportunities against two hated division rivals to continue to build momentum into next season. And let's not be mistaken by anything. This is still not a good team. They're 4-11. We've seen how things have played out when they were playing really good. They had a bad game last week, but they bounced back. And that is absolutely encouraging and what you want to see, and shows just how different they are from the first couple weeks to the middle part of the season to now who they are over the last month and a half. Still not a great team, but a competitive team, a competent football team. And when I asked y'all before the season began, asking about what are your expectations for the Panthers, a lot of people just asked for a competent football team. And that's what you've gotten against the Saints. That's what you've gotten against the Giants, what you've gotten against Kansas City, against Tampa, against Philly, not against Dallas, but what you got today against Arizona. Over the last 7 weeks, more times than not, what you've gotten is a competent, competitive football team from Dave Canales and the Carolina Panthers. And that's everything at this point in time where this rebuild's at, where there's still questions whether Bryce will be the long-term guy, even though signs are pointing to him being certainly closer to that than what we thought after 2 weeks of the season, even after the Denver game. But we saw, of course, a year ago when Frank Reich and Thomas Brown were leading this offense in Carolina. This is a team that is heading in the right direction. I don't think you can really argue against that, even with plenty of questions about the defense, where Vero's defense, they can't get off the field when you need them to a lot of times. Now, Mike Jackson made two back-to-back really good plays defensively against Marvin Harrison Jr. in overtime. I saw Jacoby Windman make some good plays today as he had to start because the injured Claude Sherrill is out for the rest of the season. Trevor Wallace out for the rest of the season. John Radigan seen as more of a special teams kind of guy. So was Jacoby Windman, the rookie out of Michigan State, having to play next to Josie Jewell, and he made a couple of solid plays in this game. Damani Richardson out there playing. Shaw Smith-Wade out there playing as well. A ton of young guys having to step up and take advantage of their opportunity in this game on Sunday. And it only helps moving forward to see guys like Windman, who I don't know if you would have thought that Jacoby Windman would be helping the Panthers late into the season win a game on defense at that linebacker spot, but that's what happened today. And this is a team that absolutely, I think, is on track. Now, will they find a way to win the next two games? We'll see. I would love to see it. I talked about this week how it's possible that the best thing for the Panthers would have been losing out and being there in the top two and trying to find that sucker and get more draft compensation. It's also possible that the best thing is for them to actually win out, build momentum, and really have confidence in what this operation is going to look like moving forward in the next season. Now, they still have plenty of areas that need to improve. I think they need to get more receivers. They got to figure out some things on the offensive line as far as who's going to be their center next year. They got to figure out, obviously, Bryce, I think he'd be the quarterback, but who's going to be your competition for Bryce defensively? Is it Jero Vero going to be the DC next year? I would expect that not to be the case. You'd think they give it 30 points again. They're on track to be the worst scoring defense in the history of this franchise, possibly in the NFL. They give up a ton of yards on the ground every single week. And a guy like Robert Saleh, who is good friends of Dave Canales, hence why they had a joint practice when they played the Jets in the preseason earlier this year. Maybe he can come here as he's available. He'll also have plenty of opportunities, I'd imagine. So we'll see how things play out. But the next 2 weeks, you got Tampa, you got Atlanta, and you have an opportunity to knock one of those two teams out of the playoffs, the way I see it. Because if you lose to Tampa and Atlanta finds a way to win in that final game there in week 18, Atlanta would still need to win and then get Tampa to lose. And if you beat Tampa and they're both tied heading to week 18, basically same case scenario. Like at week 18, they're going to get a chance to play the Falcons, likely with their playoff hopes and division hopes on the line. And if they win, the Falcons are out of the playoffs. So whatever happens next week in Tampa kind of is irrelevant to, I think, what happens week 18, depending on, of course, what Atlanta does next week. But I think regardless of what happens next week, the Panthers are playing a game against the Falcons down in Atlanta to knock them out of the playoffs. And if you're going to be 4-11, if you're not going to be in the playoff contention, that's not a bad way to end the season, especially the way your quarterback's played and the way this team has been able to rally the last month and a half. So a lot of positive things to take away from today's performance. They tried to give it away. Had some tough calls go against them. We'll break more of that down on the show tomorrow. But the Carolina Panthers finally find a way to finish 36-30 in overtime against the Arizona Cardinals at Bank of America Stadium in the home finale here in 2024. That's going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council. We'll be back on Wednesday, the next, maybe not this Wednesday because it's Christmas, maybe, but send the questions in. Send me enough questions in that I can get that episode recorded earlier and get that for y'all on Wednesday. So at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council to get those questions in for the weekly Wednesday mailbag. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always, and forever keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Tuesday.